Hello, Albemarle County students, families, staff, and community members. My name is Matthew Haas. I'm Superintendent of Albemarle County Schools. Recently, I presented to the school board our draft funding request for the 23-24 school year. And so I felt it would be a good idea to make a recording of it and share it with our community so that you can stay engaged with the budget process. Please look for next steps on how you can stay engaged at the end of the presentation. In presenting our draft funding request for the 23-24 school year, I want to share my deepest and ongoing appreciation for our wonderful students, talented and dedicated employees, involved families, and contributing community partners for all that you have done and continue to do in support of our school system. While there is an extensive list of acknowledgments in Section A for our budget book, I want to take a moment to especially thank our fiscal services staff for their commitment to and support of our budget goals and producing a balanced and needs-based draft budget. Members of the fiscal services team include Maya Kumazawa, Christopher Harper, Jackson Zimmerman, Dan Chipman, Rita Dean, Stephanie Grady, Amy Hottinger, Anita Moore, Avis Morse, and Michelle Shiflett. Our fiscal year 24 draft funding request represents our collective efforts to support the goals of our strategic plan, Learning for All, through fiscally responsible budgeting. In alignment with our mission to ensure that every student succeeds, our theme this year is We Will Know Every Student. It reflects our commitment to provide customized services to our students that recognize and celebrate their differences. In other words, student-centered learning. Every year, our months-long budget development process begins with engaging members of our community, from the students and staff to families and community members. We incorporate the ideas we hear from our stakeholders into our planning, and that feedback becomes the foundation on which we develop strategies and proposals and build our annual budget. As you know, one of the goals of our strategic plan centers around affirming and empowering communities. And that really is the crux of our budget development process as we move toward adoption each spring. A few years ago now, the school board created and approved 5 primary goals to guide our budget development process. 1, develop a budget that advances the school division's mission. 2, provide a plan that supports competitive benefits and salaries and reflects market adjustments. 3, develop a responsive and systematic approach to operations that reflects best practices and ensures long-term financial stability. 4, present budget proposals that align with the school division's strategic plan and the school board's priorities. And 5, incorporate metrics such as logic models and performance measures as management and decision-making tools. I've already mentioned our strategic plan several times now, and we're only on slide 4. I hope that really does drive home the point that our strategic plan, including our vision, mission, values, and goals, is at the center of our budget development decisions. As we talk through the changes in our expenditures we're proposing for next school year, we've organized the presentation according to the strategic goal each investment primarily supports. We'll start with Goal 1, Thriving Students. This goal seeks to ensure both academic and social-emotional growth of all students, by supporting them to achieve their full potential, by implementing structures that support their mental health and encourage them to pursue their personal interests, and by developing learning experiences that inspire engagement. This school year, we are serving nearly 14,000 diverse learners in preschool through 12th grade, 40% of whom are students of color. More than 1,700 of our students, or 12.4%, are eligible for special education services. More than 4,300 of our students, or 31%, are economically disadvantaged, meaning that their households meet the income eligibility criteria for free or reduced price school meals. And greater than 1,500 of our students, or 11%, are English learners, meaning that their first language is other than English, and they are participating in a special program for learning English. Our students are also internationally diverse, representing nearly 100 countries of origin and more than 70 home languages. Every day, our students are hard at work in our schools, engaged in learning. We want to take this opportunity to show a compilation of just some of the activities in which our students are involved in alliance with their teachers. These learning experiences encourage student collaboration, fun and challenging competition and performance, connectivity with nature and even their global impact, giving back to the community in various ways, creative expression and discovery, social emotional learning, and more.
Model Congress is a culmination of about a month and a half of true student collaboration.
You can sit in the classroom and learn this in a textbook, but really being a part of this process, and I'm not going to forget it. I'm learning intuitively how all this works, so I think it's really going to help me.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's majority.
So I think I will really be able to take kind of the leadership role that I learned from this in order to use this knowledge and kind of having a lot of responsibility and use that in my future years at college.
24 is a card game that was developed in 1988, and it was developed as a computational fluency game.
It challenges you and it teaches you to push through. Even if you feel like you don't have the answer, you should always try.
They make it a competitive game and everybody likes the competition, so I guess that makes it fun.
I competed in the competition at this school, but even after that, I want to keep doing 24 for fun because it's just so much fun to practice and learn with.
The Pollinator Habitat Club was formed 2 years ago with just a couple students and a couple teachers kind of interested in planting a garden.
This garden is supposed to bring more pollinators like butterflies and bees to our gardens, because it used to be a lot more barren, but we're trying to make it a lot more nice now.
It's a learning atmosphere, definitely, and it's friendly. It's just nice to get outside, do some physical labor, and get a good result that other people can see and other people will be able to appreciate.
We are having a food drive for the Blue Ridge Food Bank.
In a way, we're all helping the community prosper. We're doing this food drive because we're helping people in need. And yeah, just helping them out because it's holiday time and we just want to give them some happy holidays.
We are putting these in the hands of 800 fourth graders, and in fourth grade, students learn about their role in the solar system, eventually what their impact is here on Earth.
If it wasn't for science, we wouldn't have a lot of resources we have now. Well, I really like hands-on things and building, and it looks like you can do that in the kits.
Our group at Monticello High School, the National Art Honor Society, sort of came together to figure out, our action plan, what we were going to do to help the community. So someone suggested a mural, and furthering that, another person suggested doing something at Mountain View. We figured that it'd be good to extend art to, kids, and to sort of show them the importance of it and to help them understand sharing and diversity along with it.
We are very excited to open our brand new garden.
I think it's important to plant so you can use vegetables and fruits and stuff to make food.
We get to get some food and some vegetables and we get to eat them.
It's really exciting because our old one was a little bit too big, and sometimes animals came in and they munched on the garden plants.
The plays are great, they're just naturally great. And part of it is that they write the plays. And so rather than just taking somebody else's thoughts, they're putting their own thoughts on paper.
At first, I never really thought I was a good actor, but Miss Michael, she brought it out of me. I feel in a way, it's always been something I feel every kid kind of dabbles in, oh, that would be so cool to be on that show or be in that musical or that play.
I learned tactilely, and maybe that came from my art, but it definitely, my brain is wired to, I have to do the thing to learn it, and that's where art kind of comes in, and I love any project where I can make something or create something for it, or even if it's just tests and I have to make flashcards and I make them all fun because that's just how my brain is wired. And art can also be something where you can find out how you learn best. So I think it's very important.
Have the Charlottesville Cardinals coming here to do a demonstration to our students This is the first time that it's been here at Walton. It's an opportunity for kids to get in touch with their social emotional learning, also get an opportunity to see their peers, to go with inclusion, CRT, just trying to be inclusive, and like I said, trying to develop the whole student, the whole child.
I've never heard of them before, and I was just like, I was wondering like what it was, and then once like I got told about it, like I was just like, that's like pretty cool. Like they're professionals.
I got to play in a wheelchair and see what it's like and experience it. I feel like a wheelchair might be harder, and it's kind of different because setting picks is like playing in a wheelchair. Like you have to like use the chair and like not your body.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool opportunity to show how different everything was and how everybody can do anything if they put their mind to it.
We are doing a benefit concert at the Jefferson Theater for The Haven. It's going to be our jazz ensemble along with some of the area's top jazz musicians from Charlottesville and Richmond.
It theoretically is an annual thing, but with COVID, we haven't done it in the past 2 years. But it started in 2018, and it's a really great opportunity for us as a band to get this exposure to play for the community in like a public setting, so it's just really fun for us, and we get the opportunity to play with guest artists.
We have the most amazing students, and it is an honor and humbling privilege to serve them. Now, how does our fiscal year 24 funding request support our goal of thriving students? I should quickly mention that you're going to see a slide like this for each of our 3 strategic goals. I'm planning to address each expenditure increase only briefly, but throughout our work sessions, we will provide more details about the various topics in the budget. With that said, $1.2 million of our funding request increase in expenditures is allocated to regular growth. Based on our staffing standards, this support will add 14.4 FTEs in response to changes in the projected enrollment and demographics. Another $1.1 million will allow our Office of Special Education to respond to an increase in the level of intensive support services currently required by our students with disabilities. Just under $750,000 is proposed to support the addition of 8 FTEs to address current and projected enrollment growth in our English learner population. This aligns with the Virginia Department of Education's recommendations to provide increased support at the secondary level for newcomers as well as long-term English learners. Also, in support of thriving students, our request proposes just over $500,000 to expand our school safety initiatives by adding security assistance in our secondary schools. Another $126,000 supports assigning a school resource officer, which is a sworn law enforcement officer, to our northern feeder pattern schools. And finally, we've included $116,000 to support operationalizing our mental health services as we begin to shift funding for our coordinator of mental health from one-time funding to recurring funding. I'll note that we will continue to fund our 24 social emotional learning coaches in fiscal year 24 with one-time monies. We'll move to incorporate permanent funding for these positions in fiscal year 25. These investments bring our total expenditure increase in support of thriving students to just under $3.9 million. I mentioned a number of demographic shifts, so I thought it would be enlightening to compare our student enrollment today to our enrollment numbers from a decade ago. Compared to the fall membership enrollment 10 years ago in 2012-13 school year, our total pre-K through 12 enrollment has grown by 707 students, from 13,263 to 13,970. That's a 6.9% increase in overall enrollment. Over the same period, our enrollment of students with disabilities has increased by 396 students, from 1,340 to 1,736, a 37% increase, and 12.4% of our current student population. Our economically disadvantaged student enrollment has grown by 765 students. That exceeds the growth in our total number of students and represents a 23.8% increase from 3,568 students 10 years ago to 4,333 in the current school year, 31% of our current student population. To put that in perspective, our number of economically disadvantaged students is larger than the total enrollment of Charlottesville City Schools, the next largest school district in our immediate area. Most notably, we've gained 490 English learners compared to 10 years ago, a 45.3% increase. Where we were serving 1,048 English learners 10 years ago, we are now serving a population of 1,538 English learners, 11% of our current student population. Before we move on to Goal 2, I want to mention our Instructional Practices Audit. This is the next step in supporting our goal of thriving students. A problem that our division faces is that we have not raised achievement levels for our students of color despite the implementation of a variety of evidence-based and state-mandated programs and structures aimed to support improved outcomes for all students and yield robust formative data. Strategies like professional learning communities, culturally responsive teaching, responsive classroom, high school redesign, phonics-based reading instruction, and math investigations, just to name a few. The extent to which these programs are implemented with fidelity and are impactful remains unclear, and so we have initiated an instructional practices audit to obtain consultative services to help us better understand the following. 1. Our failure to end the predictive value of race in reading and math achievement, particularly in K-5 reading and math, as well as high school Algebra 1. 2. The root cause of our achievement gap between students of color and their peers and other demographic groups in K-5 reading and math and high school Algebra 1. And 3, best practices, research, and specific action steps for improvement that we can take as soon as possible. Funding needs that may result from the audit will be considered using one-time budgets. What we know is that students learn best when they have choices and a stake in their education and future, when they can apply what they learned and get feedback from experts in their field, when they feel they are making a contribution to their family and community, and when they are challenged and coached by a high-quality teacher in state-of-the-art facilities. With this philosophy as a foundation, we're preparing to launch our career learning communities next school year for students in grades 10 through 12. As an initiative that represents a real investment in the division's goal of thriving students, our career learning communities will function as small cohorts through which students will explore career opportunities based on their interests. From health sciences to hospitality and agriculture to information technology, there is a career learning community for every student, and we currently have 94 students as of February 17th signed up to participate next school year. And we are excited to be partnering with several community organizations to help facilitate high-quality experiences for our students. Among the community partners currently on board are PVCC, the Equity Center, UVA Health, Centera Martha Jefferson Hospital, the Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau, Blue Ridge Builders, and the Charlottesville's Business Innovation Council, just to name a few. Moving on, the second goal in our strategic plan supports affirming and empowering communities. This goal includes fostering culturally responsive environments that respect and champion the life experiences of our stakeholders, supporting both their physical and mental health, and actively empowering our students, their families, and employees to engage in our school community. I mentioned earlier that affirming and empowering communities is at the center of our budget development process, but our work to engage our community extends far beyond budget planning and decision making. Every school year, we connect with our stakeholders and strive to build and strengthen those relationships through a variety of engagement efforts, including community forums, culturally responsive teaching, which emphasizes building positive learning partnerships with students, families, and communities. Our many advisory groups, including a newly operational Employee Voice and Action Committee, stay interviews conducted by our Human Resources Department, superintendent listening tour stops, multiple surveys, school board meetings and public hearings, information sessions, and multiple other community events, such as our annual orientation for military families, technology support nights for multilingual families, and our Equity and Opportunities Fair, which occurred on February 18th at Burley Middle School. And I'll mention specifically to culturally responsive teaching that 368 of our educators and staff have earned either certification or a micro-credential in culturally responsive teaching since the 2015-16 school year. And we've seen growth in participation each year. Dr. Daphne Kaiser, our Assistant Superintendent for Community Engagement, recently informed me that we have our highest number yet, 181 staff members working toward credentials this year. So how does this funding request support our goal of affirming and empowering communities? $276,000 of our increase is intended to expand access for pre-K students to EDEP child care services, to reduce EDEP wait lists, and to mitigate hiring challenges. Nearly $170,000 will fund an executive director to assist in the planning, direction, development, administration, supervision, and implementation of the Albemarle Foundation for Education, which seeks to expand partnerships that will lead to sustainable, diversified funding streams and significant philanthropic investments that empower our strategic plan. $115,000 is allocated to hiring a dedicated Title IX coordinator who is responsible for the administration, supervision, and monitoring of the school division's compliance with federal Title IX requirements, as well as state and school division policies and regulations. And the last item is a proposal I'm quite excited about. Our request includes $10,000 to pilot a student voice fund. This is an initiative that will encourage students to apply for funds to address a problem currently facing our school division, involving a mentored learning experience grounded in our Portrait of a Learner. And that brings us to a total increase of about $570,000 in support of affirming and empowering communities. Throughout my nearly 33 years of working in public schools, I have seen students stepping up in areas of passion to help their peers and community as a whole through creative approaches. The Student Voice Fund provides an opportunity for us to be allies to our students by providing resources that enable them to go beyond identifying problems to creating and implementing solutions. A recent example of this kind of work in action is the empowerHER project created by Albemarle High School senior Weining and sophomore Avery Bruen. Recognizing the inequitable impact on student well-being and academic success created by poor access to menstrual products, Weining and Avery sought to help by creating an organization dedicated to menstrual equality. Their efforts have resulted in the collection of over 20,000 menstrual products for Albemarle County and Charlottesville City Public Schools students. You can learn more about their work on their website. As well, you can click on the podcast link to hear a podcast with Weining Ding and Avery Bruen talking about their project as well as their leadership journey. In addition to serving our division's strategic goal of thriving students, the empowerHER project supports equity, one of our 4 core values, as well as social justice and inclusion, one of the 8 competencies of our Portrait of a Learner. This is the vision we have for our Student Voice Fund, which we plan to launch with a pilot amount of $10,000. The fund will offer grants to finance up to 8 projects based on student proposals to address problems currently facing our school division. Approval will lead to a mentored learning experience rooted in one or more competencies of our Portrait of a Learner, including adaptability, anti-racism, communication, creativity, critical thinking, empathy, learner's mindset, and social justice and inclusion. I realize that our Student Voice Fund is only a $10,000 budget proposal, what amounts to less than 0.1% of our total increase in expenditures. But I see this as a much more valuable initiative than the dollars we've attached to it for the pilot. I do plan to propose additional funding in future years as we get better at this work with our students. You have probably heard me say many times over the years that in addition to almost 2,700 employees we have on payroll, we have nearly 14,000 students who are our unemployed employees. Let us employ them in making our schools, our community, and our world a better place. Let them take the lead, and let us be in alliance with them. As a next step in our efforts toward affirming and empowering communities, I'm very interested in building momentum around the concept of community schools. The idea behind community schools is that the school becomes a hub of the community and empowers students, staff, and families while providing services that the local community wants and needs through partnerships. Examples might include health services, nutrition programs, counseling, extended hours of operation, perhaps spreading the 180-day school calendar across a full year calendar, and family and adult education programs. Our intent is to start small this school year with a leadership panel tasked with informing the needs and determining how best to structure a hub or a school to meet those needs. The third and final goal in our strategic plan supports equitable, transformative resources. This goal is all about attracting, developing, and retaining high-quality staff, developing sustainable and modern facilities, infrastructure, and equipment, and equitably distributing resources to transform learning experiences and opportunities. We say it every year because it is true and worth repeating. Our employees are our greatest and most valuable resource. ACPS currently employs 2,648 staff members, half of whom serve the division in a teaching capacity, including classroom teachers, speech pathologists, school counselors, instructional coaches, and librarians. About 43% of our employees hold non-teacher and non-administrative positions, such as teaching assistants, bus drivers, custodians, maintenance and food service staff, office associates, human resources staff, and other support staff. The remaining 7% are administrators, including principals, assistant principals, and central office and other leadership personnel. You'll notice that our retention rate for teachers is 82.9% for this fall. The most recent data published by the Virginia Department of Education for the same time period indicates a statewide retention rate of 80.5%, nearly 2.5 percentage points below ours. Also, our teacher vacancy rate is nearly half the state average, or 2%, compared to the statewide average of 3.86%. There are multiple school divisions in Virginia that struggle with vacancy rates ranging as high as 10 to 20%, and that makes me particularly grateful for our school board's support of competitive compensation, which bolsters our recruitment, hiring, and retention efforts, and for our educators who remain committed to Albemarle County Public Schools. Thank you. And I would just like to say, in the same way that it is an honor and humbling privilege to serve our nearly 14,000 students, I feel equally grateful to work every day to support such passionate, competent, and dedicated colleagues. The biggest chunk of our expenditure increase is invested in supporting equitable, transformative resources, starting with nearly $9.5 million to fund a 5% salary increase for all employees and adjustments to our step scale for teachers. Additionally, our request includes $1.4 million to support continued improvements to our substitute program. Improvements to date include the hiring of school-based subs as regular employees, a pay increase for daily substitute teachers, and hiring a substitute coordinator. This proposal supports a second phase of improvements, including an increase in operational funding and the addition of 10 school-based substitutes to serve schools with an average substitute fill rate below 40%. $1.2 million of our request supports a restructure of differentiated staffing. Traditionally, schools have used differentiated staffing allocations to reduce class size and provide intervention services. Our proposed restructure adds staffing to ensure consistent and transparent allocations to schools to support lower class sizes in our most at-risk schools, a full-time reading specialist for each school, which exceeds the requirements of the new Virginia Literacy Act, and extra staffing to support tiered services. Nearly $250,000 of our request supports additional building services staff to maintain continued use of HEPA air purifiers in our classrooms, clinics, and school buses. Our request also proposes $61,000 to hire a records analyst responsible for establishing and maintaining a digitally secure student record storage system, and $43,000 to permanently fund a half an FTE management and analyst in our fiscal services department that was initially added using one-time federal pandemic relief funding. In total, our expenditure increase in support of equitable, transformative resources is $12.4 million. In the current school year, we've worked to improve the salaries of our employees through multiple efforts, starting with a 6% compensation increase for all employees last July. Then in December, our school board approved a one-time $1,000 bonus for regular employees who are at least 0.7 FTE and a $750 bonus for all other employees. Also in December, we implemented the first phase of our recommendations that came out of our spring 2022 compensation study. We increased starting pay for bus drivers to $21.50 per hour and implemented a step scale that provides annual compensation increases based upon years of experience for our bus drivers. We also improved pay for school nurses who hold a registered nurse license and increased compensation for positions identified as hard to fill. That is, positions that attract small candidate pools, remain unfilled for an extended period of time, or have a higher than average turnover rate. This spring, we will move forward with the second phase of recommendations from our compensation study, including increasing pay for all positions identified as 4 to 10% below market midpoint. We're also planning to make adjustments to positions that warrant reclassification based on an ongoing review. Looking forward, our fiscal year draft funding request supports a 5% salary increase for all employees, plus adjustments to the teacher step scale. And recognizing the value of our health benefits as part of a competitive employee compensation package, our request also incorporates an employer rate increase of 7% for health insurance premiums in the 2024 plan year. While I do not have the numbers at this time, we are in the process of analyzing the healthcare fund to determine if an increase for employees will be warranted in the new plan year. I'd be remiss in presenting a needs-based budget that supports equitable, transformative resources if I didn't address our capital needs. This 5-year summary is not new to our board members and the community, but I will bring your attention to the color coding, wherein projects shown in green are fully funded, projects shown in yellow are partially funded, and projects shown in red remain unfunded. This is an opportunity to thank our Albemarle County partners, as the current capital improvement program includes an expansion and improvements at Mountain View Elementary, the construction of a second high school center, and 2 elementary schools. So thank you, Albemarle County. However, we consider all of these projects on this table to be critical needs over the next 5 years. While the operating budget we are proposing moves us forward in many ways, our work will be severely hindered in the absence of an infrastructure that provides adequate capacity and optimal learning environments. Funding the renovations we've requested through a phased, multi-year approach would elevate the school division's aging schools to modern standards, including electrical updates to accommodate technology, improved access to natural light in classrooms, adherence to the Americans with Disabilities Act, updates to outdoor learning spaces, and reconfiguration of spaces to improve function, efficiency, and safety. Speaking of our aging buildings, half of our schools are more than 50 years old now, including 2 that are more than 80 years old. The other half range from 20 to 49 years of age. On top of the renovation needs that are a normal consequence of aging buildings, our current capacity needs require the use of nearly 80 mobile classrooms across the division for classroom instruction, auxiliary services, flex space, and storage. Nearly 50% of our students attend schools that fail to meet their current capacity needs, and that percentage is projected to increase as regional planners advise us that Albemarle County's population will expand by 30% over the next 30 years. The combined strategy of continually expanding facilities built in the early years of the 20th century and adding more mobile classrooms to meet capacity needs is not sustainable. It is neither in the best educational interest of our students nor representative of a thriving, prosperous county. We've now reviewed our proposed increases according to the strategic plan goal they primarily support. Here's a look at our total increase in expenditures organized by expense types, including a baseline adjustment that reduces our increase by more than $10 million, most of which is the result of eliminating one-time costs that are currently included in our adopted budget. $4 million for technical and non-discretionary expenses, including an employer rate increase for health care premiums, a $500,000 transfer to the Children's Services Act, an increase in our transfer to K-Tech, a payment to Albemarle County for shared licensing services that includes our employee time and attendance system, and an overall increase in the cost of goods and services due to inflation. We've talked about the proposed $9.5 million investment in employee compensation as well as the $4.3 million increase due to enrollment growth and demographic shifts. The $680,000 allocated to transitioning from one-time funding also includes items we've discussed: full-time teaching and EDEP assistance, filter replacement, mental health services, and our half FTE in fiscal services. New proposals totaling nearly $2.5 million, which is less than 1% of our total funding request, include the second phase of our substitute program improvements, security assistance, an executive director for Albemarle Foundation, a school resource officer assigned to our northern feeder pattern schools, a Title IX coordinator, a records analyst, and last but not least, $10,000 to pilot a student voice fund. With the baseline adjustments, our proposal increase in expenditures totals just under $10.9 million. The increase of nearly $10.9 million brings our total funding request for the 23-24 school year to $257.3 million. We are currently balanced based on anticipated revenues that include an 8.8% increase in local funding and a 6.9% increase in state funding. Keep in mind, however, our balanced scenario faces some uncertainties and potential challenges. The timeline for the state budget approval is unknown. Last year, the Virginia General Assembly didn't pass a budget until June 1st, and it was June 21st, a mere 10 days before the start of the new fiscal year, before the governor signed the budget. Keeping in mind that we're scheduled to adopt our fiscal year 24 budget at the end of April. The point is, we can't rely too heavily on funding numbers we're getting from the state right now. Another area of uncertainty and possibly significant challenge concerns the state's contemplation of a 7% salary increase, a decision that would have large impacts on our budget. Another challenge worth mentioning is the standards of quality, or SOQ funding. Roughly half of our positions in the school operating budget are SOQ positions. That doesn't mean, though, that these positions are fully funded. For example, more than 200 of our teacher positions are currently unfunded by the state of Virginia, meaning that there are $0 of state funding attached to the positions. On top of that, the teacher positions that are supported by the SOQ funding are underfunded by about $7,000 each because the state uses lower salary assumptions than we do. I will point out that the state is currently deliberating potential changes to the SOQ formulas and the funding that may benefit us later in the budget process. Another unknown is what actions the Virginia General Assembly might take to address the formula mistake the VDOE originally made for basic aid and sales tax funding. There is some movement to make up for this mistake through other funding streams. Finally, as we move forward with our financial planning, it is fiscally responsible to consider that we may face a recession in the next few years. We need to ensure that our decisions are financially sustainable through a potential downturn in the economy. While we're fairly confident that fiscal year 24 will be a good year, we're not so sure about the years to come. In closing, I want to thank our board members, Albemarle County School Board, for the opportunity to present this draft funding request. I want to recognize our school board's ongoing efforts to champion the interests of our students, their families, our employees, and our community, and their continued partnership with local government and Albemarle County Board of Supervisors to advocate for the needs of our school division. I also want to thank my cabinet and the executive leadership team for Albemarle County Schools for their strategic support throughout the budget development process, and the communications team for their contributions to both the budget book and this presentation. Thank you, Jennifer Butler, for working on your 16th funding request presentation. And while I listed her name earlier, I want to include a special thank you to Maya Kumasawa, our Director of Budget and Planning, for the first-class management of our budget development process. Thank you very much for taking time to review the funding request. I appreciate all you do every day to make Albemarle County Schools a special place for our students, our families, our staff, and our community. Thank you.